Sins of the Flesh, Forbidden Omegaverse, Book 4, by Evangeline Anderson, narrated by Dahlia Lind. Prologue. They say that a relationship born of blood cannot prosper. They also say blood is thicker than water, meaning you keep your family closer than all others. But it's not about blood for me and mine. It's about flesh. The sins of the flesh which I have committed and will commit again. I don't care anymore what they say about me or what laws they say I've broken. I was forced into this, and now I can't even say I'm sorry. I'm addicted. I'll never be able to stop, even if my actions damn me and those I love. But it never would have happened if they hadn't taken me in the first place, if they hadn't stolen me away and changed my entire life beyond recognition. Chapter 1. My abduction happened the day after my high school graduation. It wasn't a big deal, like it is with kids who go to public school. I'd been homeschooled since kindergarten, but we belonged to a small group of families who also homeschooled their kids, and our parents had gotten together to do a mini graduation ceremony for us all. I'd even gotten a cap and gown, a purple one my mom had picked out for me. I had stayed up afterwards, partying with my friends. I did have a few from my homeschool group, despite the fact that I was so plain and mousy looking. Mom always told me I'd grow into my looks, whatever that meant. But I had been too busy having fun the night before to worry that I was little and plain, so I was late getting up. I came down the stairs scratching my head and yawning, only to find a scene out of a horror movie playing out in the living room of our modest 2-story ranch-style house. 4 men were holding my parents hostage. 2 of them had my mother by the arms, and the other 2 had my father on the ground, with his face turned to the floor. My dad looked a lot like me, with blondish brown hair and plain brown eyes, which were nearly covered by the thick glasses he always wore. Now those glasses were crushed and broken on the ground, and he was bleeding from the mouth. Someone must have hit him in the face and knocked him down. There was no other explanation. The 5th man was soon to be my stepfather, though I didn't know him yet. He was tall and muscular, with a thick black beard and cold black eyes like a shark. Those eyes pinned me in place as I stopped, halfway up the stairs, frozen in fright.
So the rumors were true. You were pregnant when you slipped your leash all those years ago, Freya,
he said, talking to my mother. Zoe's a blank, a dud, my mother said quickly. She looked as frightened as I felt, though she was still gorgeous. My mother was always so beautiful with her long platinum blonde hair and pale golden eyes. I used to wish that I looked like her instead of my father. Only what did the man with the beard mean when he said she'd been pregnant when she ran away? Ran away from where? My mother had always claimed that she grew up in Norway and emigrated to the U.S. where she had met my father. According to her, it was love at first sight. They had gotten married right away, and she had gotten pregnant with me the very next month. Dad was an accountant. He didn't make a ton of money, but it was enough for my mother to be a stay-at-home mom, which was what she wanted. She never liked going out in public, and when she did, she would often wear sunglasses and a dark wig or a headscarf. I asked her why once, and she made an excuse about how she hated fixing her hair, which I never questioned, even though her long, silky hair, which was so blonde it was nearly silver, never needed anything done to it to look beautiful. My parents were a pretty mismatched pair. Anyone who saw them together was always surprised when they found out the 2 of them were married. My dad, though he was kind and sweet, didn't look like the kind of guy who could get a woman like my mom interested in him. Mom looked like a supermodel with her curvy figure and striking hair and eyes, and Dad looked like, well, like an accountant. But now he was down on the ground, bleeding, and my mom was being held by 2 thugs while the bearded man strolled around our living room like he owned the place. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. Then I ran down the stairs and stepped between my mother and the bearded man. You leave my parents alone, I said, trying to look as fierce as I could. I drew myself up to my full height, just a hair under 5'4", and glared up at him. Whoever you are, get out of our house before I call the police.
Zoe, no, my mother breathed in horror.
The man who would become my stepfather glared back at me, his black eyes narrowing as he loomed over me and my mom.
Feisty little pup, aren't you?
He snarled at me.
I'll give you one chance to back down. Your mother's mine now. You can come with her or join the human you call father on the ground. And in the grave.
No, my mother gasped. She yanked one arm free from the men holding her and curled it around my waist. She pulled me close to her protectively. I'll go with you. Let them stay here and live their lives in peace. Please. The bearded man seemed to consider this, but then he shook his head.
I won't leave any loose threads behind. And the pup has royal blood like you, Freya, especially if her sire was from your old pack.
No, she's Dave's daughter, I swear it. My mother was nearly sobbing now. Just look at her. She has no Ware heritage. She's a dud, a blank. Please, Esteban, just let her stay here with her father.
What father?
The man said, and then he shot my dad in the head. It happened so fast I didn't have time to look away. One moment he was just standing there, talking to my mother, and the next minute he had a gun in his hand, and my father's blood and brains were splattered across the light tan living room carpet. No! My mother shrieked, but I was too scared to make a sound. This man, Esteban, was here for blood, and he held our lives in his hands. My mother held me tight as they dragged us both to an unmarked black van and threw us in the back. Esteban watched as it happened, a look of malignant satisfaction on his darkly handsome, hateful face.
Take them straight back to the compound,
he told the men who had held my mother.
The wedding is tomorrow. I want to breed her as soon as her heat cycle kicks in.
I didn't dare ask what he meant by any of that, and my mother didn't say anything either. She simply held me, and we watched as the man who had killed my father got into a sleek black Escalade and drove away.
Hey, I'm really sorry about that.
The low voice came from one of the henchmen, a tall, muscular guy with shaggy golden brown hair and green eyes.
We didn't know the packmaster was going to...
He made a helpless gesture with one hand, but I knew what he meant.
Stop apologizing, Christopher,
the other man growled. If anything, he was even bigger and more muscular than the first thug. He had long black hair tied at the nape of his thick neck with a leather thong and pale gray eyes that looked almost silver as he stared at me and my mom. Black ink tattoos winked at me from his thick forearms, which were bare, since he had rolled up his sleeves to do the bearded man's dirty work. I guess abducting helpless women is hard work, I thought, eyeing those rolled-up sleeves with impotent rage. I had a mental image of jumping out of the van and trying to dodge past them both, but I knew I wouldn't get far before they caught me. They were both well over 6 feet tall, and their legs were much longer than mine. So I just stared at the two of them, hating them both as hard as I could and wishing I could get away. I didn't know it yet. Christopher and Gabriel were Esteban's sons from 2 previous marriages. But at the moment, all I knew was that I hated them. All of them. They had killed my beloved father in cold blood, and now they were kidnapping me and my mom and taking us who knew where to do horrible things to us. The henchmen were about to slam the van doors closed when Mom said, "Wait, please." I think Gabriel would have slammed the door anyway, but Christopher stopped him. "What is it?" he asked, and I could tell he was genuinely sorry for what had happened to my dad. Not that it made me hate him any less. "Please, can't I just go back in the house and get a few things?" my mother begged. She turned the full force of her pale golden eyes on them both, using her beauty in a way she usually didn't. "Well," Christopher sighed.
"Sure, okay. A few things can't hurt, I guess. If one of those things she gets happens to be a gun and she shoots you, you'll be fucking sorry you let her, little brother."